Thank you everyone for joining us. We're happy to have you for this conversation. As Shannon mentioned, I am a partner in the DC office specializing in federal employment, which also includes discussion of disability, disability retirement, retirement, FERS, everything related to retirement. It is a very complex subject, as we will go into during this webinar. And there is a lot to cover, and then there's a lot that we simply just can't get to because it is a very complex topic. As Shannon mentioned, we will be taking questions at the end. I recommend leaving them in the chat box. I will be reviewing it and getting the questions. However, if you ask a question specific to and not a general topic, we won't be able to answer that because that's seeking legal advice. However, we do welcome you to call our offices so that we can discuss that with you directly and get to your situation. Renee is going to spend time going over the topic. She has become one of the associates most familiar with retirement. She has kind of found a little niche here, and she does excellent retirement, all types of retirement work here at the firm, along with other topics. So she was the perfect person to have to talk about FERS retirement today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Renee to get started and tell you all of what we can do and what we know about FERS retirement. Over to you, Renee.
Thank you, Stephanie. As Stephanie mentioned, my name is Renee Toney. I'm one of the attorneys here at the law firm from the Buffalo office. I've had about over 3 years of experience here at the firm, and I predominantly do retirement cases. So what we will learn today: what is FERS? What are the types of FERS? What is immediate retirement and its eligibility? We'll also be focusing on early retirement and its eligibility, and how to appeal issues within basic FERS retirement. So what is FERS? The Federal Employees Retirement System was established to replace the Civil Service Retirement System, CSRS, and to conform to a more federal retirement plan that is similar to private sectors. This was established around 1987, and for the federal employees retirement system, it usually covers the executive employees, judicial branch, and legislative branches. However, it does not cover military personnel or employees of state or local government. With FERS, there are many components to it, and the three most looked at components for FERS are the basic benefit plan, Social Security, and thrift savings plan. However, we'll be focusing on the basic benefits plan. As Stephanie mentioned, FERS is very vast, so we will be focusing on specific basic benefits plan today. So as mentioned, since we're focusing on the FERS basic benefit plan, there are 4 parts for this: early retirement, immediate retirement, deferred retirement, and disability retirement. In our next series of this retirement webinar, we'll be focusing on disability retirement. So if you have any questions, then please return for us to have that conversation. So what is early retirement? This is a very niche retirement within the government, and it's only available in certain circumstances. And the most common circumstance is when an agency undergoes major reorganization, reduction in force, and transfer of functions. As we've seen early in the year, there has been a lot of reduction in force. So if an agency is undergoing this, the agency will offer early retirement. Reduction in force is also known as involuntary separation. This is not the same as if you're separated for a cause, which would include misconduct or delinquency. So if you were separated without your consent and against your will, that isn't related to a misconduct, then you will fall under the reduction in force for involuntary separation. Note that the agency is only permitted to offer early retirement with OPM's approval. Once this is done, the agency, HR department, or your employer will contact you to tell you about your eligibility and whether or not you should apply.
Renee, and I'll add to that it is an option for the agency to offer early retirement in those situations. It is not required. It is
Yes.
certainly worth asking HR if you're in one of those situations. A lot of people have found themselves in these situations throughout this year, asking about it. But while the agency is allowed to offer in working with OPM, they are not required to. But it certainly is worth asking about.
Yes, that is true. So eligibility for early retirement usually includes if you're someone of 50 years of age with 20 years of service, or any age with at least 25 years of service. Something to really consider if you are offered early retirement is whether or not you have bought back your military time, because that can play a major factor in you reaching that credible years of service. So with buying back military time, it does provide some benefits, which include that reaching the years of credible service, and it increases your benefits once you are done or once you are applying for VERA or early retirement. However, one thing to do consider as well is the cost that comes with buying back your military time. This can be substantial. So it will definitely be recommended for you to contact your HR office to see how much it will cost if you do decide to buy back your military time to make it the credible years of service. I do want to provide an example next, just to see how this works if you are offered early retirement and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So Patrick is a federal employee of the age of 45. He's been in federal service since 2007. Of June of 2025, Patrick now has 18 years of credible service on the FERS. However, Patrick also has about 9 years of military service, which would put him at working from 1999 to 2006, or that would be 8 years of service, sorry. So from 1999 to 2006, it will total 8 years of his military service. Patrick's office or Patrick agency has now offered him VERA, or early retirement. Patrick does not have that 25 years of service that he would need to retire. However, what Patrick can do is buy back his military time. The 25 years plus the 18 years plus the 8 years of service would put him over the 25 years to actually retire. However, since Patrick has not bought back his military time, it will make it difficult for him to do that. What Patrick can do, he can try to commence the process, but it's possible that he will not be able to actually meet the deadline to actually apply for VERA. So if it's a case where you are currently holding on to military time and haven't bought it back, it's something you should definitely consider in the near future in the event early retirement is offered again. So the application process for early retirement usually varies. It also depends on the type of retirement you're being offered. This can be VERA, which is also known as Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, or VSIP, which is the Voluntary Separation Incentive Program. This usually comes with a sort of payment that you get from the agency. When you are applying or filling out these forms, the agency will provide them to you. So it's always recommended that you take good notes of what is being required of you and fill out these forms correctly. If you need assistance, we recommend seeking counsel on what you should and shouldn't do in terms of these forms. In some circumstances, you might encounter issues when applying for VERA or VSIP. In these circumstances, we would definitely recommend that you look to see whether there was a gap in your federal years of employment, whether there has been issues with your SF-50. You should check to see if you've received any certificates. Usually when someone reaches 20 years of service, they usually get a certificate from the government stating that. So all these documents you should definitely keep. And if you continue to notice issues with not being able to apply with VERA or VSIP, you should contact your HR to see what information you would need. It's important to be very proactive when you've applied for VERA or VSIP, because in recent months, we've noticed a lot of employees come to us stating that early in this year, they have applied for early retirement either through VERA or VSIP, and October 1st came and they're hearing a different story from the agency. So we definitely recommend contacting counsel to see what you can do there, but being proactive throughout the entire process would be beneficial. Okay, another very common type of retirement that we do or happens within federal government is immediate retirement. Generally speaking, immediate retirement benefit is one that starts within 30 days from the date you stop working. However, you can also apply for immediate retirement while still in federal government, but you need to meet certain requirements. And that's usually the minimum retirement age with 30 years of service, be age 60 with 20 years of service, or be age 62 with 5 years of service. So if you are applying for immediate retirement, this is what the form looks like. It's called a SF3107. I'm going to point out a few things within this form that I think is definitely important to note. For example, the date of final separation, it's on section B of this form. Whether you are terminated from the government or you're still employed and you've reached those eligibility years in age, you still need to fill out a separation date. So it would just be the date that you no longer want to be with the government if you are still employed. The section here is very small for annuity election, but this is where you choose how much and when you want your annuity to be and how long you want your annuity to be given to you. Annuity is your monthly payment that you get from the government. So usually you have the choice to give some of the annuity now to yourself, give some to your spouse, or you can even give it to your dependents. Depending on the section you choose, you might have to complete a spousal consent form, because if you are stating you want your spouse to get 75% or 20%, whatever the percentage is, you'll need your spouse to sign off on that and have it notarized. OPM will not accept it if you do not have it notarized, and your spouse needs to sign. On the other side of the form is the schedules A, B, and C. This is where you fill out your military service information. It's important to fill out every subpart of this form. If you neglect to fill out any portion at all, OPM will return it to you, or your agency will. This is another portion of the section of the form. Here's where you fill out your tax information and where you want your money to be deposited. Note, if you do not select to withhold taxes, at some point you will have to pay taxes at the end of the end of fiscal year. So if you do not withhold now, you'll still have to pay it eventually. So it's something to consider how you want your taxes to be apportioned when you are applying for retirement. And lastly, on this page, well, I guess I should preface by saying this SF3107 form has about, I want to say 14 pages you have to fill out. So we're just showing you a snippet, and this last page we're showing you is just where your agency will fill this out for you. Your agency will corroborate that you have X amount of years of service and you need to fill this out, and they need to fill it out so that you can sign it. You will not have to put anything here. It's all for them to complete, and you'll sign after the fact. Okay, so just to summarize or just reiterate some of the things I've said about the form. The SF3107, if you are employed, or if you are employed, you still have to put the final date of separation. Whether or not you're employed or not, a few documents that you need to gather will be your military discharge certificate, your marriage certificate, divorce decree, workers' comp paperwork if you did apply for workers' comp and has been approved, and military buyback paperwork. One thing I do want to note as well is that if you are filling out your SF3107 and you have received federal employees benefits, you are still eligible to receive that after retirement. However, you would have to have at least 5 years of continued insurance with the government for it to be active. And if you do want insurance after the fact as well, you would have to fill out a form called the SF2818. What we've noticed in the past is that when clients usually come to us, they've noticed issues with OPM and their retirement paperwork. And some of the issues they note is that OPM has some sort of miscalculation of their annuity credible years of service. Most times, OPM does not have all the SF50 documents to see the continuation of service. So in some cases, clients would have like 5 years short, 2 years shorts, just to make them not meet the years of service that they need to actually move forward immediate retirement. So if that's the case, you should definitely ask OPM to revise your work and to make sure that all those documents are gathered. Another issue would be the miscalculation of the overall payment. Miscalculation can happen for a number of reasons. OPM does not know what your high threes are, and as I mentioned before, the years of service. So if that's a part of your issue, you can ask for a revision. Stephanie, you have something?
No, I think that that's a very good point. And I think, one of the things that's involved in that is making sure that you're communicating with your agency and they are transmitting the right information. You probably want to review your OPF prior to your last day, just to ensure that all of the proper SF50s are in there so that OPM can make a determination on the correct amount, annuity amount, and based on your high threes. So you want to make sure your file is complete, that nothing's missing, nothing was added, etc.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And in addition to that as well, when you're filling out the disposal section, Stephanie had a case where OPM just completely disregards the person's spouse. So and OPM uses their ex-spouse instead. So it's very important when you are sending information to OPM, you send both your marriage certificates and divorce decree if that's your situation. But making sure all those documents are provided to OPM and having that explanation will help them review the process. In some cases, OPM even misunderstands or misreads the divorce decree, so it can lead to your spouse or your ex-spouse having a smaller or larger monthly payment. And even in some cases, OPM even mixes up the court orders for FERS and CSRS. So once you get those documents from the court and from prior employers for the federal government, it's important to send all that to OPM. Before I talk about requesting reconsideration, I want to note that when you are applying for retirement in any form, if you are currently an employee, what OPM has done recently is that you will have to complete the application online. You still have to fill out these forms physically, but there's a portal that you now use where you have to submit all information through OPM's portal and your HR will review it before they send it off to OPM. So if it's the case now, you submitted all the things that you need to submit. Your SF50s, certificates, applications, OPM still gives you information that's incorrect. What do you do? Well, first, I would definitely recommend that you reach out to the specialist that you are assigned. Usually, whenever you apply for retirement, someone will be assigned to you to help you in the next process of having everything completed. However, in some cases as well, that person you're assigned to might completely ghost you after you submitted everything. With that being said, if you do notice errors in your paperwork, I would recommend reaching out to them to see what happens or if they can correct it. You can either file information by mail or email that person who provided you the paperwork. If you file and call and mail and you still do not succeed, you can request reconsideration. We recommend always reaching out to an attorney to see how they can assist with the process. But if you proceed by yourself, this is on the slide, we currently have the mail address you can send information to for requesting a reconsideration. So what's your request for reconsideration include? If you are requesting reconsideration, in that package, you should provide a detailed explanation of the issues that are involving your annuity, whether it's the incorrect amount, your high trees are incorrect, your spouse is not there. Always provide a detailed explanation for that. Any supporting documents that you have as well, that will be helpful. That would include the marriage certificate, divorce decree, any other paperwork that you've received from OPM. If it's the case where OPM have sent you repeated mails about your retirement process, add all of that to your request for consideration so that OPM can see the chain of events and the lines of everything that has happened, all the conversations you've had with everyone, so that they can keep abreast of what's happening now. And lastly, any SF50s you might have, anything in your personal file that you think would be important to send to OPM, to get that corrected, that'll be helpful as well. General notes about OPM. So as I said, as Stephanie and I mentioned, we've been doing retirement cases for, we don't even know how many years right now. But what we've noticed with OPM, they're very particular. Whether you're filing through your agency or directly to OPM, remember, when you're filling out these forms, if you're writing it with your hand, make sure it's legible. Do not make any scratches, do not cross out anything. OPM or your agency will send it back. They do not play about scratches or cross outs. If you are signing, make sure it's a wet signature. We've noticed OPM and the agency had an uptick in how you sign your forms. They've no longer are accepting electronic signatures to an extent, but to make sure that your documents are processed properly and in a timely manner, definitely consider or definitely use a wet signature. And when you are filling out these forms, as I mentioned before, there may be 14 pages, if not more, when you're filling out these forms. Read every section intensely, correctly, and make sure each subsection is completed. If anything is missing, guess what OPM will do? Send it back to you. So if you do not have these subsections, you will not have your stuff processed in a timely manner. And lastly, people ask this very often. I've submitted everything to OPM, everything I possibly need to submit. How long does it take? Well, that's a tough question because OPM is very unpredictable. So this, just an estimate, we would say 8 to 16 weeks. So we would recommend that you be proactive in getting everything that you need to, because if OPM has to send stuff back to you and you send stuff back to them, you're looking like at half a year of getting information back and forth. So it's better to complete everything correctly in the first chance you have before sending it out. Next slide, please.
Another thing to add to that, Renee, is, given our current situation, the fact that there was a 43-day shutdown, OPM is behind. They are behind for that 43 days. They weren't able to process anything. They could still receive applications during that time, but nothing was moving. Additionally, there's been staffing changes, and so that timing could be prolonged because of the shutdown, the delays, staffing of certain offices, and getting to those getting to applications in what we consider the regular timely manner, which is more reason, to Renee's point, to make sure that everything is complete, accurate, when you submit it, so that you don't have OPM sending it back to you and then start it, going through resubmitting, etc. So it could take quite a while to get these processes, particularly given where OPM is right now.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, if you are still employed with the government, contact your HR to see what the process is. They will usually send you a form so that you can upload all your documents on the OPM website, because every agency is linked to a different OPM link. So you will have that sent to you so you can complete that process online. But you'll still need to complete the paperwork separately and then upload it to the portal. Does anyone have any questions?
I do recommend, if this is something that you're going through right now, and you have specific questions, or you think that either your agency or OPM are doing it wrong, not doing it correctly, or not processing it, or have questions about what is being submitted, you certainly can give us a call to schedule a consultation so that we can go over that with you, and we can look at specific documents during that consultation, and walk through the process directly related to your situation.
Can you go over the deferred retirement under FERS? Are you eligible for FERS retirement even if you are removed from federal service but have 20 years of service?
But Renee, that was a two-part question. Let me take the second part first. If you're removed, being removed from federal service, in other words, if you were removed for misconduct or a performance issue, that will affect your ability to get your retirement. And unless through an appeal you get that removal changed, Probably not. Again, that is going to be fact specific to your individual case, but misconduct removal or performance removal does hinder that. Now there are ways that you can that we could work with that and try to negotiate, but typically the answer is no, you're not going to get retirement. Now, Renee, if you want to answer the first part of that question, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, so first retirement, deferred retirement, we're going to do a series on this as well, but usually have to reach eligibility number of years before you can apply. It just means that you're looking to retire later in the future, but you're doing the application now to have that processed. So when that time comes for you to actually leave the government, that paperwork is already there and then you leave out. But as Stephanie said, you usually have to be still within the government for that to be applicable to you.
Question 2 was, if you think you'll be ready to early retire, early 50s in the next couple of years, is there a way to retire if VERA preferred voluntarily or just continued service involuntarily are not being offered? My 30-year mark of federal service would be in about 4 years. If I wait until then, or maybe try to leave before that time, is there a way to retire not with workplace disability in that age range and still get my pension and medical right away?
Yeah, so this sounds like a very fact-specific question to the person asking the question. This would be one of those questions that we wouldn't be able to answer in this forum, but we could answer in a consultation so that we can go over the specific facts of this person's question.
Okay.
But I do want to note though that the person is asking about Vera. So Vera, like I mentioned in my slide, Vera is very specific in the circumstances. The agency has to offer it. So as Stephanie mentioned, the person can contact the firm and we can go over their options.
Okay. How to appeal a decision to MPA board?
I'm not quite sure what that's referring to for the MPA board, but I believe if it's related to a request for reconsideration, Renee went over where you could submit that request. There are also, depending on what the situation is and what the determination from OPM is, there are appeal rights also to the Merit Systems Protection Board that you could pursue. Again, it's specific to what kind of determination, but there is the possibility that you could also file an appeal with the Merit Systems Protection Board.
Okay. And then the last question we had beforehand was, what are the pros and cons of consolidating a prior federal service pension plan, not FERS, into FERS pension plan? Is it better to receive 2 separate pensions at eligibility or merge prior plan into current FERS pension to maximize payout?
So that is a very person determinative question, because you'd have to look at the specific benefits, the timeframes, where we are. So I would recommend that we handle that one individually with the person who asked the question. I also want to say that, typically we assist with guiding employees through the application process, but then particularly when it goes wrong and something has been done incorrectly. The first resource for a lot of questions about retirement and specific eligibilities or specific benefits, computation of benefits, although that is available, there's a calculator on the OPM website, is to reach out to your agency's retirement office. You can, they have access to information that we would have to rely on the client to get. We just don't have access to that directly, being outside of the government. The retirement office has direct information on how they would compute your eligibility and retirement benefits. So I would say that either going to the OPM website to do that first review or talking to your agency retirement specialist would be a good place to start. And then you can always give us a call and we can compare and we can see if they're following policy or if they're doing something incorrectly.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Have a great